Hello, I'm Robert Godwin-Jones from Virginia Commonwealth University. I'm going to be talking about AI writing tools and language learning today. Here are some assumptions I'm making as a basis for this talk. AI is here to stay, generative AI. It's getting better, it will get better through machine learning. And students will use it widely, as will we. As a consequent, language teachers will need to understand how these systems work, understand what they're good at, and what the limitations are. And we'll need to convey that information to our students by talking about the use of these tools and perhaps demonstrating their use. AI is not a silver bullet. It's not something that students or we can rely on its own. We need to incorporate AI in a meaningful way into our curriculum. But it's not the only technology tool that's going to be useful to us or to our students. We've got to figure out how it fits in well, how these different tools fit into our curriculum. And that's going to differ with each teacher and with each institution. The new face of AI is represented by ChatGPT that we're all familiar with, and we're hearing a lot about at this conference. Capabilities that have amazed us all, I think, in terms of the speed at which text is generated. Long discourses can be generated that are grammatically correct and very coherent, well written. A variety of genres can be created, including computer code, poetry. One of the amazing things and one of the distinctive features of ChatGPT is its memory capabilities. It remembers what you've talked about in your chat. And what that allows the user to do is to ask for redos, to change a prompt slightly and to get a different version of a generated text back to you. AI is not new. It's been around through familiar functionality like ranking algorithms in Amazon, Netflix, others, machine translation, voice technologies with voice assistants, most recently maybe with predictive text with auto completion technology that we're all familiar with. I think now through Google Docs, Microsoft Word, basically every writing tool has that today. But we're seeing an AI frenzy. It's not just in text generation, it's in images and video. And we're seeing AI built into all kinds of businesses. It's not just language education. But there are a lot of concerns, and there are a lot of voices about AI that we've heard from recently. Here are a couple of those. Snoop Dogg was trying out ChatGPT and was amazed that he could hold a real conversation with a computer. And he talks about the old dude here. They created AI. And the old dude is this guy, Jeffrey Hinton, who sees generative AI as a risk for the human race, potentially extinction, in fact. Here's another technology guru, Mark Andreessen. For those of you who've been around as long as I have, remember him as the main creator of Mosaic web browser and Netscape back when. He thinks AI is a great thing. Well, why are there so many different voices? That's because we're dealing with systems that we don't really understand that well, and that the creators of these systems don't understand. It's not like normal computer programs where you're writing code, where computer engineers are writing code that they understand and they go back in and change. Here, these AI systems are pretty much a black box. They function through feeding immense sets of data, and the systems learn through that data how language works through machine learning, through these algorithms that are fairly complex in analyzing how sequences of text are put together and translating text basically into mathematical symbols. So it's not like early AI, which tried to have computers understand human language the way that humans use language and understand language, namely through looking at things like word order, syntax, how sentences are put together, and teaching computers about how that works, about morphology and semantics and so forth. That didn't work as well as what is now being used with these so-called transformer models of generative AI that have been around for about 5 or 6 years now. And basically, these systems generate language through looking for patterns or looking for regularities in language and the immense data that they've been fed. And so they figured out how language works in that way. So they don't understand language in the same way that humans understand language. They don't have an understanding of how language works in human society. And that's an important thing to realize. There are a number of AI writing tools. I'm just going to go through a few of those briefly. This information is based on a column I wrote recently in a special issue of Language Learning and Technology on AI writing tools. And I wrote first about automated writing evaluation tools like Criterion, MyAccess, and there are a number of these, which are mostly used by institutions. These are not typically tools that instructors will acquire on their own, or certainly not ones that learners will purchase. And they basically have moved from being systems that simply grade essays to being full-fledged writing assistants. And they can be very helpful to students. Studies have shown that to be the case in terms of improving their writing at writing tasks at hand. The disadvantage here is that typically these systems look primarily at language mechanics, look at word choice and grammar, and therefore they tend to not value creativity and originality. A more widely used set of tools are these synchronous grammar checker writing aids like Grammarly. There are others like Ginger or Pro Writing Aid that provide continuous feedback to students, learners as they're writing. Can be very helpful. Studies have been a number of recent studies of Grammarly, and here too they've been the use of this of Grammarly has been very helpful in improving students' writing. Hasn't been shown to be that helpful in long-term writing development on the part of students, and it would be helpful to see more long-range studies of the use of tools like Grammarly. Machine translation today is based also on artificial intelligence. This has been controversial in terms of its use in instructed language learning. Some teachers seeing it as cheating, and students not really trying to do assignments, but just handing over the assignment to Google Translate. Studies have shown that's by and large not the case. It's certainly true the students use Google Translate, whether their teachers allow them to or not. But they mainly use it for looking up single words or phrases, and not for just wholesale copy and paste. It's important here too, as with all these tools, to talk to students about what these tools do well. For example, Google Translate does great on single sentences. Now it depends on the language group that you're talking about, the two languages, whether how good Google Translate is. But for most languages, certainly for European languages, for for major world languages. Google Translate does a very good job these days, but there's some things that it's not so good at. Colloquial language, for example, or regional variations. And so one of the things that I think studies have shown, and I point particularly to the special issue of L2 Journal, where there have been very interesting use cases of using machine translation in second language acquisition. And there are some aspects of integrating machine translation very helpful to students in terms of learning what these systems can do. For example, using post-editing assignments has been shown to be very helpful, having students analyze the output. And one of the things you could do these days, because ChatGPT and other AI systems also now do translation, is to have those systems come out or with different translations, different versions of a text, or to use translations from different machine translation tools. So you could use Google Translate versus ChatGPT, for example, and have students do an analysis of that. It's helpful in students understanding how language works and gaining metalinguistic knowledge and learning about the limitations of these tools as well. So what is the future going to bring? Well, I'm not so foolhardy as to predict what direction we're going to be moving in terms of AI tools in the future. I'm convinced that we're going to see many more of those. I'm a little concerned about availability of those for the whole range of students in terms of their social and financial situations, because these systems take a lot of energy to run, as well as costly computers. And so I think we're going to be seeing the commercialization of these AI tools, and I'm not sure what that's going to mean for our students, but we're certainly seeing AI integrated into all domains of human activity in terms of language learning, not just in writing tools, but as a back end, for example, in chatbots. And I'm sure we're going to be seeing that happening with commonly used voice assistants like Siri and Google Assistant in the near future. One of the things to get excited about, I think, is the potential for AI through the memory capabilities that we're seeing, for example, in ChatGPT and related tools, is the potential of personalization of learning, of these tools acting as a tutor or learning companion because of the ability of these systems to build a language profile. And that's, in that sense, I think we're seeing the potential for fulfilling the promise of intelligent call, of tutorial call, of systems that will be able to do adaptive learning to individual students, because the system will have a profile and have a memory of previous interactions. At the same time, there are a lot of privacy concerns, a lot of concerns in terms of the appropriateness of language. I think we're all familiar with the so-called hallucinations of ChatGPT. Sometimes goes off the rail. And as I mentioned before, I think there's concern for what this might mean in terms of access and cost in the future. There's also the concern with what the availability of these tools means for the future of language learning and for the future employment of language teachers. I have a reference here to an article I wrote recently on that topic. By the way, this presentation is available in my profile on the WOVA site, if you want to check out the links that I put in here. I think that one of the things that's clear to me is that the availability of the AI tools is going to lead to us to reconsider the goals of language education generally, and particularly looking at the availability of tools that will allow for students to write grammatically and correct and coherent text. And we want to make sure that students understand that's only one aspect of language use, that language use primarily is a communicative tool, both in terms of spoken language and writing language. And so I think when we're thinking about integrating AI tools into the curriculum, we want to make sure that we think about those end goals of having students use language in meaningful ways, in meaningful communicative ways. And one of the things that I think we can look at is having students use AI tools to produce language that they're used in social interactions. And I think that's one of the directions that we need to move in terms of thinking about integrating these tools into instructed language learning. Well, thank you very much for your attention.